actually the broader event so far. But maybe I'll begin with initially a quick introduction. And from there on, I was actually going to cover a couple of topics, but maybe let me come to that later. So my name is Alok, and I'm one of the founding partners at a firm called Stellaris Venture Partners. We are an early stage tech VC fund, invest across different areas in technology. Personally for me, I've been investing primarily in SaaS, both at Stellaris, and prior to this, I was at a firm called Helion Venture Partners. So in both of these places, my investment focus has largely been SaaS. Prior to which, I used to be a software sales guy, I guess that's the best way to describe it. Spent 9 years at SAP, where I ran different sales team in US and in India, and eventually led the P&L for SAP India until 2012. Again, thank you so much. I know that over the last few days, or I would say rather the last few weeks, all of you have been reading a lot of news. I've been reading it as well. Most of it is gloom and doom. But let's actually begin with a few positive messages. Unfortunately, I may not be able to avoid all the not so positive messages also, but on the positive side, let's actually talk a little bit about why SaaS is making sense and why India within SaaS is actually a great opportunity, first of all. So in general, when you think about the transition from licensed business to SaaS business, there are lots of reasons why these businesses are actually valued so well. Having spent, I guess, I would say growing up days in SAP, we used to be fretting at the end of a quarter and typically the last week, because all the revenues used to be recognized in a spike. Whether you are having a good quarter or a bad quarter, usually actually you would know in the last 2 days of a quarter, which was not such a good situation to be in. So it was not a very predictable business. It was not a recurring business. Things needed to be implemented on site. So these were longer implementation cycles. And again, the last 15 to 20 years have taught us that there are lots of fundamental advantages of the SaaS business model. But the one thing I want to highlight, and which is something actually we're going to revisit later in our discussion, is the way the cash flows for this business work, which is that if you look at how SaaS works, let's say you spend time on a 5-month sales cycle. And for the sake of argument, you have spent $5,000 on the overall sales and marketing cost for a particular sales cycle. When you close it, let's say you collect $10,000 from the customer. And usually you will end up collecting 12 months upfront from the customer. So while the revenue is going to accrue on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis as you prepare your P&Ls, but the cash is actually collected upfront. Number two, this cash is actually, that comes to you at a very high gross margin. Give or take, this will be about 80 to 90%, depending on the kind of segment that you're targeting. Effectively, you are pocketing $8,000 to $9,000 on a $5,000 sales cost. But the better part is that usually this $8,000 to $9,000 of gross margin is going to repeat itself for the next couple of years unless you completely screw up. And therefore, when you look at the economics from a lifetime perspective of every individual customer you have, that economics in SaaS actually is very, very attractive. And the fact that it is repeatable and predictable is what the stock markets actually value a lot. And which is the reason why, depending on the times, you will find that SaaS companies have been valued anywhere from 8x of your current recurring revenue to maybe sometimes even 15x of what your recurring revenue is. And that's why these businesses make a lot of sense. Why is India very attractive for building SaaS companies? And I will admit that I've gone back and forth in my own thesis on how attractive it is or not. But I think there are two primary reasons. One is that since the beginning of the early 2000s, most of the sales and marketing in SaaS has changed from what I would call in front of the customer, which is feet on street, you do your song and dance, to being very remote. It could be digital marketing for building your pipeline today. And usually either customers just come and self-serve, or you could be selling to them through an inside sales channel as well, which means that you can do it remotely. And if you could do it remotely from sitting within US, there is no reason why you can't do that remotely from India, and the cost of doing so are far lower, and you can be very, very efficient. And the second one, which I think we have seen for ages, is just a lower development cost and the lower support cost that you can have in a business like this from India. Net, you put the two together. It is not a big surprise that if you look at the last few years, we have seen, I guess at the last count, probably 5 unicorns that we already knew of, which includes Zoho, Freshworks, Icertis, probably BrowserStack, Dhruva. These are companies which have been created, and then there are scores of others. In our own portfolio, several have done well, like Whatfix, many others that we have been in, not invested in, but have been in close touch with, companies like Mindtickle, Innovaser, Capillary. A whole variety of companies have done very, very well. If you actually look at even at an aggregate basis, I was just actually looking at this data today morning, and I would encourage some of you to go there if you're interested in it. If you go to the Bessemer Cloud Index, just type that on the browser, it'll give you what the growth in market capitalization of young SaaS companies is compared with other indices. So if you look at the last 5 years data, NASDAQ has actually grown by 2x, almost exactly, at its peak. Of course, I'm discounting the last now 3-4 weeks. But at the same time, if you look at the emerging SaaS companies, which are public, that index is about 4.5 times in the same period. So 4.5x in last 5 years is actually a pretty massive growth to have had. So clearly, as you can see, that the capital markets have rewarded this space very well. Let's go fast forward, which is that what happens to SaaS companies when there is an economic downturn. And while, again, as I said, all of us are reading a lot of news. We have our points of views on what's happening to global economy, how much the impact will be in India. And again, I don't know what's the right view. My own personal view is that we are going to be hit very hard for a variety of different reasons, because I think in general, markets react not just to bad news, but they react to uncertainty. And right now, I don't think there is much news that is available to have any level of certainty. We have no clue whether we are dealing with a one-wave virus, a two-wave virus, a three-wave virus, the mortality rates, the impact of heat or the lack of impact of heat. There are just so many variables. We don't know which medications are going to work. When will a vaccine come out? You put all of those bundles together. That's on one side. Let's actually take some other data. If you were to go and research what happened in the Great Depression, from the peak in 1929 to the trough in 1933, a 4-year period, the US economy shrank from about $1 trillion to about 750 billion. So give or take about 25% reduction over a 4-year period. And you do the math, it's about 6% per year, right? Which is actually pretty steep by its own right. And again, that's the reason why we all remember that event. You look at the data that is being suggested for the US economy in this downturn. Most estimates that are coming out, and of course these can change, is that we are looking at 30 to 40% contraction of US economy in just the second quarter. And why am I quoting US economy? Because I think we get to see most numbers on US economy. That is not to say that other economies in the world, whether it's Europe or Asian economies, are not going to be equally impacted. And that 30 to 40% contraction is about a $2 trillion contraction in a single quarter. And if you think about that data, it's possible that the speed at which we are going down, we may spring back up again at a similar speed. Our ability to deal with such shocks is probably better today. But I think it still takes time to recover from these situations. Another investment banker shared a document yesterday with me, which talked about, if you look at the peak before the 2008 downturn, and remember that even though Lehman Brothers was an event on 16 September 2008, US economy had started going downhill because of the shocks to the financial system even before 2008. So from a peak to the downturn, I guess at its bottom and back to the peak, was actually just over a 3-year period in that situation also. So these situations, I don't think the world bounces back that quickly, or at least that's my bearish view, if you will. It takes time, and therefore I do think that this is going to take time. In contrast to other crises we have seen, it is not just an economic crisis. I think this one we are dealing with a massive humanitarian crisis as well. But anyway, let's put that behind us. For a minute, please do indulge me and let's make the assumption that we are going to go through a downturn, and therefore it's going to impact a variety of sectors. Let's look specifically at how does it impact SaaS businesses. I think, and again, I may be completely wrong and I would rather be wrong, but I do think that SaaS as a sector is actually going to be very deeply impacted. And I want to go back to why we love SaaS businesses. I talked about we love it because of its cash flow profile. In fact, you will find that many SaaS businesses, they will continue to be EBITDA negative, but will continue to be very cash positive. And the market of course rewards the cash in the end. But let's look at what happens to your cash flow in a situation when there is a downturn. 5 things. Number 1, I do believe that most enterprise software is discretionary. What do I mean by that? Let's assume that you were a company which had 20 salespeople. You were managing your pipeline on a spreadsheet, which is very common. And you begin to feel that, you know what, this is probably not the best way to do it. I should probably use a CRM. You start evaluating CRMs. And just before you are about to pull the trigger, you realize that your business could be impacted. What would you do? Will you still buy that CRM? Or will you say, well, let me take a pause. I think I can always pull the trigger a quarter later, maybe 2 quarters later, maybe actually even 3 quarters later. And therefore, most purchase decisions for enterprise software either get delayed or they get canceled altogether or postponed indefinitely, right? And remember that what we were discussing in the beginning, whenever you do a new sale, you collect the cash upfront for 12 months at least, sometimes even for 2 years. And that cash that you are going to see in the business, you have already incurred the sales cost, which you have paid for. But that cash doesn't come into your coffers, number 1. Number 2, the life, I was going to use the word, the lifeblood of a SaaS business is actually the renewals. You sell it once and then you reap the benefits for multiple years. But again, imagine that, think about yourself. You have bought a software and you find that your revenues are going to go down. You will look at every expense that you are doing. And when you look at every expense, you will also look at the SaaS expenses that you are incurring. Again, depends on whether you're an SMB business or a large enterprise business. Your churn rates can vary. But in a situation like this, your churn rate actually becomes much higher than what it was before. And therefore, the cash flow that you were taking for granted, that begins to get hit, number 2. Even those that do not churn, what do? They come and renegotiate the pricing with you. I don't know what you guys are doing, but if I look at our portfolio, pretty much every company in our portfolio is renegotiating its rent with their landlords because they want to save every penny. It is not surprising that companies will also renegotiate the pricing for the software they have bought if they're coming up for renewal. That's number 3. Number 4, it is not just the price that they pay, it's the payment terms that come along with it. Look at the impact on your cash flows when you collect annual upfront versus if you're collecting quarterly, or if you're collecting monthly. If you're collecting monthly advance versus monthly post a month. All of these actually have a significant impact on the cash flow profile. And there is a last element of it, is that you can write whatever contract you write. In the end, you need to collect the cash. And usually you will find that the days sales outstanding, even past the due point, that period also begins to increase during these periods because everybody wants to hold on to their cash. Now you put all 5 of these together. Again, different people again will have different guesses, but I would hypothesize that there will be a pretty significant cash flow impact to your business. I was reading somebody's tweet, one of the VCs in Silicon Valley, who tweeted something from Zuora, which is a subscription billing company. It's a SaaS company itself. And since they collect a lot of data, Zuora was actually not very bearish, They talked about the fact that, look, things are looking healthy. I would actually argue against it. I think we still have very little data to say that things are actually going to be healthy. If I were in your shoes, I would actually not believe on that data. I will actually quote my own data back from 2008 at least. I put out a blog where I put this number also. In my sales career, my best quarter ever was actually 2008, third quarter, which is July to September. I was in India at that point in time. India was sort of shining. There could be no tomorrow. And we thought that we have escaped what happened because of the financial crisis in the US. US actually evaporated in that last 2 weeks of that quarter, and the sales really plummeted. India didn't. As I said, I had my best quarter ever in that quarter. But when I look at Q4 of that same year, which is October to December, my revenues fell by more than 95% in a single quarter. Everybody postponed their decisions. And Q4 is usually the biggest quarter for large software companies. And that quarter should have been much bigger than what my Q3 was, but it totally sort of fell off the cliff. Again, not trying to scare everybody, but what I'm trying to point out is that I think it is your job as entrepreneurs to be prepared for what can happen and plan for different kinds of scenarios. So let's actually shift the gear, which is what is it that you can do? I think first and foremost, as we talked about churn and the payment terms, etc., that come alongside with it, I think you should be doubling up on your customer success. If it's a new customer who has not really deployed your product in the past, they may hesitate, they may postpone the decision. But if it is an existing customer for whom you have already delivered the value, chances are they are going to stick with you unless you screw up in some form. So what is it that you can do? I think this is the time to be more proactive, communicate more, talk about the value that you are delivering. Ask them what more can you do to deliver more value to them. Are there tweaks in the products that you can do by which they can actually get more value from your product? Sometimes you might find that for some of your customers, their volumes may actually really drop. Be prepared to actually give them certain waivers during this time as well. I think it's okay to be a bit nice to customers. It is important not to lose the good customers that you have during this point in time. So just to maybe give an example of one of our companies, they are a SaaS company, and part of their sales is to fintechs in India. And as you can imagine, fintechs have been hit very hard in the lending space. The volumes have totally plummeted. And this company is actually giving waivers to some of them. And I think that's a good gesture on your part to do with your existing customers. But the point I'm making is that at a broad level, if it's customer success, I would be doubling up on customer success at this point in time. Second thing is that I think you need to seriously think about realigning your cost structure. And this may be sort of a hard one to reconcile with. But if you look at a SaaS company, yes, you have cloud computing cost, you have some rentals, etc. You're paying, maybe some other SaaS software you're using. But in the end, most of your cost is people cost. And most CEOs, I think I find I can put into two buckets. One who have acted very swiftly, and those that are trying to be very nice. I would argue that your job as a CEO at this point in time is number one, to save the company. And I would look at the people cost also very, very carefully. And please don't get me wrong, there is no one size fits all solution. It is possible that you may have just raised funding. You may have actually cash for a very long time. And therefore you might actually even see it as an opportunity to recruit more talent. And if that's the case, you should please do that. So I'm not suggesting that this is only about cost cutting. But the point I'm trying to make is that you need to be very careful. If I were you, I would be looking at my annual operating plan and rethinking that annual operating plan. Every line item of that annual operating plan, I would be rethinking. You should think about segmenting your customers. And maybe one option is that you look at what's large enterprise, what's small and medium businesses, and what's mid-market. Usually you will find that there will be a lot more churn in SMB. There might be lesser churn in the large enterprise. Keep some conservative estimates. And before this call, when we were putting these adjectives for entrepreneurs, I had actually chosen optimist. Why? Because I think that if you are not optimistic, you can't be an entrepreneur. And by and large, I believe because you're optimistic, even your worst case assumptions sometimes may actually be too rosy in my books. So be a bit careful as you do the scenario building. You can land yourself in two situations. One is that, you overreact and actually the world may turn out to be better than what you thought. So the impact on the economy is not as deep as you thought. Scenario two is that you were planning for a rosier situation with the world economy and were not prepared. It turns out to be much worse. And therefore you end up in a situation where you have your backs against the wall and you have run out of cash. In that case, you have an existential issue. And at least I don't think there is much debate about the choice between the two situations. If I were you, I will be choosing the first one, which is I will overreact rather than underreact in a situation like this. But again, I will repeat that it is not a one size fits all. There are certain software categories which are actually benefiting from the situation also. So if you are a collaboration company, I think we have all been hearing about Zoom, but it's not just Zoom. I think whether it's WebEx, whether it's Microsoft Teams, we have a company in the collaboration space called Noticeboard. They are benefiting from this situation as well. So you could be benefiting from this situation. The other category which is benefiting is things which earlier were supporting processes for physical situations, which now need to be done digitally. So for example, a company in our portfolio which is into digital KYC. Now, even though banks and other financial services have reduced volumes, but those volumes earlier had to be handled in person for their KYC. Today, there is no option for that to be done digitally. And those kind of companies are actually benefiting from this situation. That still being said, I still think that the best founders are being a bit circumspect. They are being cautious. They are being a bit conservative. They are realigning their cost. And most of them that I know, they are making sure that they have runway for a minimum of 18 to 24 months, if not longer. And that's what I would urge you to do, at least within our portfolio. For all the SaaS companies, particularly, depending on the company, depending on the cash they have, depending on which sector they are in, whether it's a US company, US centric or India centric, large enterprise versus SMB centric, the cost reductions have been somewhere between 20 to 40% of the burn that they were going to do in 2020. I don't know what the right number for you, but if I were you, I would actually look at it again very carefully. So I was asked to speak for 18 minutes and then take a pause. So I am going to take a pause. Would love to take questions from the audience.
So I think Amit have some question. Amit?
Hello.
Yeah, Amit, you can ask your question.
Yeah. Hi, Alok. Thanks for this nice session. So we are a travel and expense management SaaS-based solution. We have completely automated the travel plus expense part, having few clients. But now, what is your suggestion? Because we had some plan on sales. We were engaging with some of the large clients in India. Now what will be the plan, because COVID-19 has changed a lot of things, and I am hoping, seeing the scenario and talking to a lot of clients and prospective clients as well, no one has the plan to travel very massively for next 6 months. So what do you suggest? How should we move ahead?
So Amit, I'll give a sort of an escapist answer that's saying that it depends. It's hard to give a good answer based on the level of information that I have. I will, however, say that if I have to take my guesswork, this segment will actually be impacted, and impacted actually quite deeply as well, for the reasons that you're talking about. At the same time, it is actually a core part of the workflow for most companies. So I don't think many of your existing customers will usually take a call that we're going to remove it because the downturn has hit us. Even if there is lesser travel, usually in travel and expense management, there are other kinds of costs also that come into picture. Therefore, I don't expect people to be dumping this, at least in your existing customer base. But a large part of the answer will also depend on whether your customers are SMBs or whether your customers are large enterprises. If it's large enterprises, remember that it's very difficult to get inside them, but it's very difficult for large enterprises to take anything out also. So churn there is actually going to be still much lesser. But if you are very SMB centric, if you are very India centric, then I would assume that this category is going to be hit hard. So I would focus on, as I said, two things. One is see what you can do to retain your top customers. I would put a lot of focus on that. And number two, I would be rethinking my cost structure. Remember that you need to be alive to fight the battle. If you're not even alive, you will not be even able to fight that battle tomorrow. So I would be cautious in the outlook.
Thanks.
Thank you. Shall we go to the next question?
Yeah. Next is Rawat.
Yeah, hi, Alok. Thanks for amazing feedback that you have shared with us. I run a company which is SaaS based, and it's an online training company specifically for retail industry. The retail industry itself is under a huge crisis, and although the business is pretty relevant, but because of the industry is in bad shape, what do you suggest us to make the next move for?
Good question, Iti. Tough one again. And I guess my answer will not be very different from the last one. See, physical retail is hit and is actually hit pretty hard globally. That being said, I don't think the lockdown is going to remain forever. It depends on the category. But by and large, I think within retail also, you should think about which category of retail you sell to. If it's essentials category, I think it may bounce back faster. If it's a non-essentials category, it may not bounce back as rapidly. And again, if these are small retailers, I think they will be hit much harder. If it's very large retailers, they'll be not hit as much. That still being said, I do think that training as a category will be hit more compared to other categories of software that even a retail company. So let's think that, let's again, just for the sake of comparison, assume that there is a POS software solution. That I would still argue is a very core software. They will not be able to do away with it. But I think if it's training, there is a risk that a category like training and training expenses in general, I think could take a backseat in downturn. So I would again urge you to, as I said, again, focus on the large existing customers and to rethinking your cost structure.
Yeah.
Sure, thanks a lot.
Next is Ashutosh.
Hi, Alok. Thank you so much for the session. We run a firm that provides analytics as a service to the non-profit space. However, we are now planning to venture into the SaaS model because we have a couple of products that are most possibly something that's really the schools would be needing. Do you think this is the time that we should venture a SaaS model, especially for the non-profit space? And if yes, then what kind of pricing would you suggest us to, so that we would be able to extend our runway for a while?
This one is a difficult one to answer, Ashutosh. I'll give you first a generic view, which is do things that you know already and you do well. That's what I would focus on. If you are doing a certain kind of experimentation, actually it doesn't matter whether it's just a shift from services to a SaaS kind of a model. Any of these transitions take a bit of time for you to get to become good at. And usually that time period where you are trying to learn, there is actually some cost involved in that learning process as well. I'm not sure whether you will have the luxury to do it at this point in time. So my first reaction, and again, please treat this as a relatively uneducated guess because I don't know your business or your customers very well. But my bias will be that just stick to what you know best and don't make that many experimentations unless I think you have some sort of separation of the clouds and you can see a little bit more clearly on the path forward for the overall environment. I think the good news for you is that this is the time where actually NGOs are becoming more active. So in some sense, their needs may actually, your market actually is becoming more vibrant in some sense. But I would still be careful in terms of what you can sell more to them, and particularly if it's a different offering compared to what you were doing currently.
Thank you, Alok.
And next is Basudha.
Hi, Alok. This is Basudha, and we also run travel and expense management, SaaS-based, enterprise software. And my question is that when is the best time after this COVID-19 to sell our product to new customer. As you said, that this is not the right time for selling it to new customer, only the existing one if you have, and that to a big corporate, then our focus should be sustaining them. But what if like a company like us, which is in a startup, I don't have a very big name associated with us. So when is the best time to sell these products, and what should be our target audience? I mean, I will like target the market, whether we should concentrate on an SMB first or a big corporate. Because as you're saying that the big corporates also have a chance of chunking their existing solution. So is there any way we can offer?
Basudha, I think actually Alok got to your question. Alok?
Yeah, Basudha, let me react to that. First of all, maybe what I said was misinterpreted. I did not mean that you should not sell to new customers. All I meant was that I would develop on the existing customers, but that doesn't mean that you should not sell to new customers. I think you should. Who you sell to, I think that's the part you may have to sometimes rethink a little bit. At least in a few of our companies, what we are doing is that if there are, I mean, let's take a completely horizontal SaaS company which used to sell to many different sectors. At this point in time, I would not be spending too many of my dollars from a lead gen perspective or from a sales perspective on hospitality, travel, etc. That being said, there are other sectors which actually might be doing well, like as we were talking about in the previous example. If it's an essential goods retail or CPG, I think that those sectors might actually do well. So I would actually choose sectoral. I think the first axis for me will be to say which are the sectors I'll prioritize, both in my demand generation as well as in my sales effort. Number two is that even with the large enterprises, let's say you were already selling to a lot of large enterprises, which means that you understand the beat, the go-to-market beat for large enterprises, then I would continue with that. I don't think there is any reason to stop it. But I would qualify the opportunities harder, because large enterprise deals can actually suck a lot of bandwidth. If you have not done that in the past, then I don't think this is the time I would want to learn selling to large enterprises. I would actually stick to SMB and mid-market at this point in time. But as I said, I would actually be very careful in my selection of sectors there.
Next is Rohit.
Hi, Alok. So we run a SaaS for automotive service centers actually, and most of our clients, they are in the countries where car service comes under essential services.
Mm-hmm.
So we have not as such seen any churn or stop of subscription so far. But we have seen that their business has dropped by 30-40% at least. So while doing our cost planning in our operating plan, we did a lot of cost cutting and other things, but we have assumed that 40-50% of our MRR would still realize in next 6 months. Do you think it's a reasonable consideration, or we should be just considering that nothing would, like even yesterday we have received our renewals?
So Rohit, I think it would be very unwise of me to give you a percentage number or even react to your number saying whether it's right or wrong. I think there are so many specificities to every business and to every company, and by the way, even to a specific customer of yours, that me hazarding a guess is probably not a wise idea. That being said, let's say you are at a particular run rate today, and for the sake of argument, let's say you are at $1 million ARR today. Maybe I misunderstood what your comment was, but let's say you are saying that 12 months later, we think we'll still be at least 50% of this, which is we will at least be $500,000 ARR. By and large, and again, this is now a very by and large comment here, I think in most cases, that may actually be a reasonable assumption to make, at least, or I should say a reasonably conservative assumption to make. And if you are planning your cost with those assumptions, I think you're okay. The other flip side I would also say is that even as you make these scenarios and even as you plan your cost, this is not a static picture. You will be revisiting this with the data that you're getting on a monthly basis. So April and then maybe May and maybe June, these are all going to give you a lot of incremental data. So I would be revisiting my operating plan literally on a monthly basis based on what you are hearing from your customers or potential customers.
Sure, thanks, Alok.
Okay, thank you guys. I think those of you actually, in the interest of the time, actually, Thank you, Alok. Actually,
Okay, can I just ask last question?
Yep. Sanjeev, last
Okay,
question.
I'll be very quick on that. Alok, we run a SaaS-based model which looks into productivity management of people-centric organizations like IT or consulting and those kind of people. It precisely works into the direction where we can manage the timesheets or the productivity of individuals, including a productivity index, which precisely works in the way for work from home kind of concept. So interestingly, when I was just about to go to the market, this thing happened. So I'm just in a kind of dilemma situation, and you can guide me further whether we should just stop getting into the market and put our ad dollars into it, or we should just go and get it.
So, Sanjeev, I think first of all, if you think about the space, which is, as you talked about, the productivity management within services companies, where people essentially are the SKUs, and you are measuring their time utilization, that's actually a very core piece of software for those kinds of companies. So I think it is, in my books, that's a must have. It's not a good to have, at least. So in that sense, it's a good space. If you are very early, which is that, at least as I heard you, you don't really have customers yet, but you are thinking of go to market now. Now that's a bit of a tricky situation, because in general, getting the first customer, the first 5 customers is as hard as getting, I would say, 50 customers 1 year down the line. And therefore, there is a lot of experimentation, a lot of effort it takes. I would say that at a founder level, as long as you're not hiring a sales team for it, if you're really at that early stage, I think first few deals are always sold by a founder, not by a sales team. And I would still encourage you to not stop the motion that you are into. That being said, I think sometimes when you're very early, you have the luxury to almost hit the pause button. I'm assuming that because you're very early, you will have a very little cost base also. And if the burn is very small, and again, this is just a purely theoretical number, let's say you're burning 5 lakh a month. You could be in a position to say that, look, let me put a pause at this number. Let me see sort of how I will, while I'll continue my low burn efforts to get a few pilot customers, but I will push the pedal only once I have more clarity on where the world is going. And until that time, I know that I can survive with very little burn, because it is actually a very early stage company. So 2 points. One is keep the burn very low, but I would not stop the effort of getting the pilot customers. And at this point, you're not trying to optimize the revenue you get from those pilot customers. You're trying to make sure that you learn about the product market fit of your product at this point. So I would still encourage you to do it.
Hey, Alok, thank you very much. Those of you, actually, if you have questions to Alok, please